Excellent, and welcome to the TAD Summit online conference. We've got Andreas, who is back presenting at TAD Summit. His last time was in Aveiro in Portugal. So, Andreas, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Well, surviving, being honest. But I'm interested, because A, congratulations on raising the round, and B,
Very much.
congratulations on adding Felipe to your advisory board. I think that, he's one of the good guys. So I'm really pleased with both the cash and the people you're bringing together to help you in building Sipfront.
Oh, thank you very much.
No, you're welcome. So what have you been getting up to? It's been so many years.
Yeah, I think last time we met was 4 years ago,
Correct.
and that was when we were just starting with Sipfront. So, actually the company got founded end of 2020.
Yep.
And 2022 in Portugal, it was really like the first conference we did as a company.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we even got a couple of customers out of that conference,
Yay.
which was really amazing. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yeah. Happy
And
to
I
help.
mean, we have evolved like massively, not only because like we changed, but particularly like the market changed,
Yes.
right? Because when we look back at what we presented there, it was automated testing for like automated telecoms.
Yep.
So a lot like API specific and call control specific via the API. And that was like the not really anymore, but still kind of the hot thing back
Yep.
then. And now it's not. Now it's something completely different. And I think this is what we're going to talk today, right? So,
Exactly. Perfect. Perfect. So I'm just keen to learn what have you been getting up to? How did you raise that round?
yeah.
And share perspectives around voice AI.
Yeah. For us, racing the round is enabling us to expand our footprint,
Hmm.
particularly in terms of whom we address.
Yeah.
Because, I've been like 25 years in telecoms now,
Yeah.
and I know how telecoms tick, and I know how they work. And we have been targeting them like when we started the company in terms of I've been in more night shifts than I dare to remember, right? And
Yeah.
every time at 3 or 4 in the morning, when you did some changes, you had to go over your Excel sheet and you blow
Yes.
into your phone and see if you still have two-way audio and everything. And that was how we started, right? And
Yeah.
the overall idea was really still to automate this, but to
Yeah.
automate it for telcos, to
Yes.
get my future me's a bit of relief to say, okay, let's just press a button, you run through automated tests, and you have a coffee, and
Exactly.
once you're done, you go. But this changed a bit. It's changed due to two reasons,
Yeah.
actually. One reason is, telcos are stubborn, and people like me, they are also stubborn, right? I mean, I'm in my mid 40s now, and the people that we work with are in their mid 40s. And if you go to them and say, look, you're doing software development on a telco level, and you're still running all your tests manually. You're not
Yeah.
properly monitoring 24/7. The first thing you get usually is, "Hey, I'm doing this for 20 years and it worked for me." And it's hard to convince these kind of people, right?
Yes.
I
Yes.
know because I'm one of them. So um, that was like a commercial aspect where we really had a hard time actually to convince people to go a step further and say, look, every time you do a change, you can run through CI/CD integrations, all your tests and everything,
Yeah.
and that's just gonna make your life easier. Your availability will be better, like the availability of your system, the quality will be better, the customer experience will be better. And thinking about that and talking with the end customers, also the enterprises that are using these kind of telco solutions,
Yeah.
that actually turned out to be a very interesting market for us as well. It's totally different in terms of how you approach them, how they perceive the telco
Yes.
systems. Not so much like what is SIP, what is RTP, how does it work. It's more like always, okay, how do the customers perceive my solution? Like
Yes.
contact center. It's about
Exactly.
customer experience, customer retention, and first core resolution and stuff like very, very matrix driven, but not
Yes.
technically rather than customer driven. And
Exactly.
this is what fascinated us. And this is also where the two kind of approaches kind of clicked, where we are coming
Ah,
from and also where the
yeah.
enterprises are coming from. Because truth be told, if you have large telecom operations and one of the customers fail, it's like 0.00 something percent of,
Yep.
but if it's you as an enterprise who really is, fall off the train and just nothing works anymore, you can't call out, customers can't reach you anymore, then it's a real problem, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And this is what we aim for in terms of the funding on one hand side to
Cool.
really expand our footprint into this part
Within the
specifically
enterprise segment. So it's
within the
targeting.
enterprises.
Excellent. That's great news.
And so there's like, contact centers. There's a big movement still going on from typical on-prem contact centers to CCaaS solutions.
Yeah.
All the big players are moving currently, like Genesis and Nice and all these kind of solutions. So there's a lot of migration from one platform to the other.
Yes.
There've been like the things with Avaya and all these
Yeah. Exactly.
customers that are creating a bit of a headache
Yeah.
for enterprises.
Exactly.
And these kind of migration projects, they are risky. And this
Hmm.
is where we help them on one hand side. We
Ah,
help them to
understood.
say, okay, well, how does the call quality work? Do you, all your core scenarios work? Are you reachable? And how does it work with your home office
Yep.
personnel,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
So sometimes they are then on some unmanaged internet connections, or they are kind of nearshored somewhere.
Yep.
You don't have the network under control anymore, and you just want to know, does it work or does it not work?
Exactly.
And apart from that, like different technologies now, a lot of call center agents are now working with WebRTC solutions, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
web interfaces and not phones anymore. And they have their issues, obviously, quality wise, and they are
Yeah.
super hard to troubleshoot. And this is where
Yes.
we're aiming for. And then the super important and super interesting part in terms of technology, because it's still first telephony, right?
Oh,
So there
yeah.
was nothing new other than whom we're talking to, but voice AI started to
Yes.
come up. And that comes with a completely new and challenging set of
Yeah.
yeah issues
Hmm.
and things to consider. And this is what we are now mainly focusing on, because
Gotcha.
it sits on top of what we have done over the last year. And
Exactly. Exactly. Understood. And with testing, I mean, like, there's speech to text, text to speech. There's delays matter a lot more because you've got basically interruptions and speed of response to customers asking questions. I mean, how are you positioning your sort of monitoring and testing within
mm,
that more complex environment?
yeah, I mean, there are a lot of moving parts, obviously,
Yes,
and I have a presentation that I'm gonna share in a second, where I go into the details of, okay, which kind of
perfect.
parts do we actually have. And
Yep.
I mean, there are different players, two very different approaches to the market.
Yes.
And we are serving both of them
Yep.
successfully, fortunately. However, it's totally different how two different kind of companies or type of companies approach the thing. One is
Interesting.
telco companies, traditional telco companies, usually UCAS, to a certain extent CCAS. They are
Yeah.
merging nowadays, right?
Exactly.
Who are super skilled on the telephony side because they've done that for like 20 years, right? I mean,
Exactly.
talking about like Zipgate and CloudTalk and those kind of companies, right?
Yeah.
Who are now putting voice AI on top.
Hmm.
And their challenge is more like the AI part rather than the voice
Yeah.
part, because voice is what they control and what they
Exactly.
manage, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the AI companies, such as I would say like Baloo, Cognigy, the big ones that actually started out as AI companies and chat
Yes.
and everything,
Yeah.
and then moved towards telephony more and more, or put telephony on top, kind of as a
Yes.
necessity due to
Yeah.
the omni-channel approach.
Yes.
And they have AI very tightly under control,
Yeah.
but there the challenge is more on the telephony part. And both of them are
Understood.
super interesting to serve
Cool.
from.
Interested to learn more then.
Yeah.
So
So
let's move to your slides.
let's share my screen.
Yep, I can see it. That's clear.
All right, very good. Okay, so I was taking the sloppy take of saying from vibe coding to production, state of voice AI. Why? Because there is not only the technology in itself and what we roll out to production, rather than also how we get the technology and how this is being created nowadays.
Yep.
So we already talked a little bit about like the Sipfront journey, but really it has been kind of an evolution from testing and monitoring of like telco core infrastructure, typical cores, one course, the other, maybe a core forward, sometimes a core transfer, doing the quality tests and so
Yeah.
on. Start to move into end-to-end
Hmm.
testing, right? Where telcos were saying, hey, I have VIP customers that are suffering from quality issues. Typically,
Yep.
it's not even a telco problem. Usually, it's a network problem, or often it's a network problem,
Yeah.
right? But it's really hard to, go out there to the customer and then, doing some test cores even. It doesn't happen all the time. So if it's just sporadic, it's really hard to catch that, right?
Yeah.
So that has been quite successful. But then when we were already at the customer, at the enterprises, right? Why not serve them directly? Right.
Yes.
And that was
Exactly.
like the evolution. And from there, we basically
Ah.
learned, okay, what were the challenges or are the challenges of these enterprises?
Yeah.
And we were moving from, work from home, troubleshooting scenarios, then up to, or actually back to the enterprise core. Like, how do they operate their contact centers? How do they operate their CCaaS
Ah.
solutions?
Yeah.
And how do they operate voice AI? And we're going to look at that very specifically. Like, how does voice AI work today for enterprises? Where
Hmm.
are they even? Because
Yeah.
there is a huge bubble technology-wise nowadays, like what voice AI can do. And we're going to
Exactly.
look a bit into sometimes a bit painful truth of the
Yes.
reality. Right. So voice AI in 26. It
Mhm.
started like at latest last year when OpenAI real time came out, and suddenly
Yes.
you could just talk SIP and WebRTC
Yeah.
with voice AI models. It was like,
Exactly.
hey, it's cool that it talks, right? So everybody was putting out voice AI, and you had like a phone interface to basically all of your content, right?
Yeah.
But that moved very quickly into it's actually providing real return of investment
Hmm.
because and we will come to that. Like a talking FAQ is just not providing a return of investment. You
Yes.
really have to, solve tasks and do things with it, and
Exactly.
that's good. That's challenging. So when we look at how these solutions are being worked on, and I'm mostly talking about like rather the smaller ones. I mean, the bigger ones have like the development cycles, the QA cycles, and everything, right? I'm more talking about like all the small voice AI companies and startups, and they are super important that they do that.
Hmm.
The thing there is though, it gets super easy to create these kind of applications, right?
Yeah.
Um, and the problem is not a problem. It's super easy because you can just vibe code it. You can,
Yep.
take your cursor IDE and
Hmm.
say, hey, based on, I don't know, this asterisk configuration, or based on this open source
Yeah.
whatever framework, or based on this Twilio configuration, just create me a voice bot, and it will happily
Yes.
do
Oh
that.
yeah. Absolutely.
And the focus is on, or the focus is on the happy. The happy is what makes this very dangerous because when you are then testing that, there's this happy path, right? So everything works. You talk to your bot. It's super interesting talking to it once, twice, maybe 10 times. It
Yeah.
starts to get boring at some point, obviously.
Yeah.
But what you usually don't do is what about like all these corner cases, right? Like,
Yes.
I don't know, talking to the bot. What if somebody sneezes in the background?
Yeah.
What if somebody shouts in a different language into my call? Is
Yeah.
the voice agent switching languages or not, and so on?
Yeah.
And also, what happens if like not one or two or three people are talking to my bot rather than 5 or 10 or 20? And
Yes.
people that I don't even know, what are they doing with my bot? And
Exactly.
that's something where there's quite little visibility for these prototypes. And it's
Yep.
very tempting to put these prototypes into production. And you probably have seen on LinkedIn the horror stories where on a Monday morning, people are posting like, "Oh, I put my voice bot with a Twilio number in on the public internet,
Yep.
and over the weekend it accumulated a bill of 20,000 euros at
Yes.
OpenAI."
Yeah.
because fraud is a thing, and I mean, we in the telco world know this, right?
Yes.
And we are at least trying to protect against this since decades. And now people are moving into telco, which have to learn this the hard way often,
Exactly.
and that's where they are thrown off the happy path. Then.
Yep.
All right. So the bottom line there is really those things are easy to build, but they are supposed to be hard to break, and this is what we try to do at Sipfront to
Exactly.
make them.
Gotcha. Understood. That's clear.
Um, and thinking about like, okay, how do you actually build these voice bots? Are gonna be a little bit technical, not too much, right? Just trying to cover the basics. So when we look at bots now, it's 2026,
Yep.
and there are two pipelines, there are two approaches that we typically see. One is like the classical one,
Yep.
speech to text, the LLM, text to speech, with all of its pros and cons. The pro is obviously that it's super modular, right? You can just,
Yes.
replace Whisper with DeepGram or Voxtrail or Quen or whatever kind of models are out there, and there are a lot of them out there, and you just need to search on Hugging Face or on these typical platforms for examples. But it's super cool that they are out there and that you can use them.
Mhm.
The other pro of using this kind of pipeline is it's super traceable, right?
Yes.
Because it's text that kind of falls out of the pipeline. And
Yep.
the challenge with telephony and real-time communication is always audio or to a certain
Exactly.
degree video. Right?
Yep.
And it's very hard to in real time kind of firewall these kind of things, right? But
Hmm.
there are solutions out there that are doing this kind of AI firewalls, which try to keep everything in place and secure, that it's clear what is being fed into the LLM in order to not have some kind of prompt injections and
Yep.
prompt exfiltrations and whatever exists there, right? And the problem there obviously is, I mean, everybody who is working with these solutions knows that there's a latency tax. So obviously it takes time from the STT, like speech to text, passing it on to the LLM, and then getting the LLM output as text, feeding it back into the text to speech, and then off you go over the telephone line. You have to encode it and all of these things. And
Yep.
yeah, so you just accumulate latency, and we see this with customers and projects we are doing. So usually that's I don't know that. The unfortunate part is that usually people come to us when it's already a little bit too late, right? When
Yeah.
the
Decisions
thing
have
is on
been made.
fire.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, hey, actually, you see also again, probably it's my LinkedIn bubble, but on LinkedIn, I see this news about the new super real-time voice bot that answers within like 200 milliseconds.
Yeah.
It's just not what we see in practice, right?
Correct.
If we do the end-to-end testing, and that means we do a phone call from a simulated user to the bot and then look at the whole path end-to-end,
Yeah.
it's more like 800 to 1.2, 1.3, maybe
Yeah.
1.5 seconds, and
Exactly.
nowhere near 200 milliseconds.
Exactly.
And the other problem with this is obviously loss of emotional nuance. Like you lose the
Yes.
prosody, right? So you're just not getting if the customer starts to shout into the phone, which is super important. And we are gonna look at that a little bit later in terms of how
Ah,
how these
interesting.
solutions are being perceived then by the end customers, and
Yep.
also what enterprises running these solutions are actually afraid of, right?
Hmm.
Um, because another interesting learning for us was when it's about emotions and yeah, the customer's mood is if you think about it, like not from a technical point of view, rather than from a work level and the personal HR point of view,
Yeah.
it's at the moment a lot of there are a lot of call center calls, and if you think about like give or take 1 out of 10 is probably an escalation, right?
Yeah.
And the other nine are like, hey, I need to do this, I need to do that. It's like a
Yeah.
normal conversation,
Yep.
nothing special, and you can just work quite relaxed. And now, if all of those things are being handled then by voice bots and only the escalations are being transferred to the call center agents, my question there is always, what does it do to the people working in the call centers if you day in, day out just get shouted at, right? I mean, that's a huge
Yes.
burden and putting a huge level of stress, which hasn't even been very much covered by these kind of
Nope.
technical solutions, at least.
Exactly. And I've seen discussions around that. There's changes in stress levels for people working in contact centers because of,
Mm.
how it's the tough problems that are coming to them, not the easy ones
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah. The FAQ can be handled by your voice bot very well.
Exactly. Very slickly, and people aren't even aware they're dealing with a voice bot. They thought it
Yeah.
was a human they were talking to.
Yeah. Yeah. I just heard like the other day, last week, we have been to contact center world in Berlin,
Hmm.
and talking to enterprises there. It was about, EU AI Act and whether the bot actually identifies itself as a bot. And although even if it does, one of the folks there told me they often hear or experience that when a calling party, an end customer calls the bot and gets transferred to a person, then they tell the person, "Hey, your colleague just told me that this and this and that." Right, so they really, I mean, it's amazing, right,
Oh,
from a
yes.
technical point of view that
Oh, yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of people are not even recognizing that.
Exactly.
And that's how the way to actually achieve that is really the second part, like native speech, the typical speech-to-speech models, right?
Yeah.
So classical examples, OpenAI real time, Google
Yeah.
Gemini Live, right?
Yeah.
So they do catch these emotions, obviously, because they catch your tone and
Yeah.
everything. They are super low latency, at least when you connect to them directly via WebRTC.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because the other problem is if you start transmitting your audio perfectly fine via Opus and all this forward error correction and everything, and it's crystal clear. And then what we see a lot is when we look at bot designs is that this audio then is being chunked up into like PCM audio pieces, right?
Yes.
And it's being transferred over TCP WebSocket connections to the bot, right?
Yes.
So you suddenly into the cloud that is not even on your premise. So it's
Yeah.
again over the public internet. And there you start to lose completely whatever you win on the phone line.
Exactly.
And this is one of the things where a bit of telco engineering is really needed in order to
Gotcha. Understood. Because yeah, it just becomes so blocky. It's almost like stepping back in time and some of the
yeah,
artifacts we
exactly. So
saw.
yeah, exactly. All right. Yeah, obviously the drawback of this is, yeah, it's a black box. You can't look into OpenAI. You can only to a very certain extent change it, tune it. There are quite some ways to prompt it, and that
Hmm.
goes way beyond just writing a markdown file and say
Yeah.
you are this person and you that. You can even make OpenAI real-time stutter,
Yes.
right? If
Oh
you want
yeah.
to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's really good. Yeah, and the other thing is like higher cost, obviously, right? I mean, it's
Yes.
an API, they want to earn money and everything fine, but it can really, get expensive really fast.
Yes.
And the other thing is like guardrails, so you suddenly don't have these clear separations where you have paths where your content is transported as text and where you can at least in real time look into that, right? So it
Yes.
gets really hard to double check and see, okay, is my bot saying the right thing or not?
Exactly.
And block it at the right time.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then we have the forgotten one, NLP, right? That
Yeah.
was before the LLM hype, right? Or the hype, yeah, it's that actually a natural evolution.
Yes.
And the funny thing is when you talk to enterprises and you talk to them like or ask them which kind of bots do you have deployed, and it's still usually NLP style ones, although nobody talks about them in our voice AI bubbles, right? In
Hmm.
our voice AI bubbles, it's all this LLM and how to tune a response time and everything. In reality,
Yeah.
a lot of them are still NLP.
Gotcha.
And you remember we trained people to shout into their phones like yes, no, one, two, three. Why? Because they
Yeah.
are extremely deterministic, right? So they can
Yes.
only understand like a certain volume of phrases, right?
Yes.
In order to go to one path or the other, and that's where this is coming from. The good thing about that is that they are absolutely deterministic, right? So you know
Yes.
which way they are gonna go. And yeah, that's where I say, well, this is very important where the LLM creativity is a liability, right? So if you
Yes.
really want to know, hey, I want to collect digits, I want to do exactly this and nothing else, then those are the type of bots to go. And they got a bit out of fashion, as I said. But what we also see is like the good voice AI providers, they do provide some kind of mix and match
Hmm.
way, right?
Yeah.
So you as a voice bot user can actually choose and say, okay, well, there's this greeting and the disclosure. You have to say, hey, I'm Betty, your digital assistant, right? So you adhere
Yeah.
to the Voice AI Act to identify as a bot, right?
Hmm.
And this call is going to be recorded
Yeah.
because usually it is going to be recorded one way or the other, or it's going to be
Exactly.
transcribed, right?
Yes.
So you have to disclose this. And if the LLM just doesn't feel like it due to whatever, right, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Usually they don't, and they get better a lot, right? But still, if you want to be 100% sure, you would use an LLB for that. And then also
Yes.
for the authentication. Hey, my name is Andreas, and my I don't know insurance ID is 12345, and I want to get like a status update of this insurance claim,
Yeah.
whatever, right? Typical authentication. And that is what these kind of bots do very, very well, and
Hmm.
sometimes better than LLMs.
Yeah.
And then you can switch over, right? Like with old traditional IVR systems. So press one, press two, press three, whatever. So you do it very deterministically. And
Yeah.
once you're done with that, then you can actually hand it over to an LLM style bot to catch the intent and
Exactly.
just tell it in a natural way what you want.
Yep.
And then we come to tool calling, but this is some other topic that I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into, like giving your bots hands,
Hmm.
and you can destroy or do a lot of damage with hands and tools, right?
Yes.
And we're going to look at. Okay, so vibe coding crap. As I said, I mean it's super easy nowadays to create bots even from scratch. We've done
Yep.
that. We've even used vibe coding for that, and it's fantastic. I know of a couple of people who are really hating vibe coding. I just don't really understand it. Maybe bad experience or whatever.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
would say we have pretty good experience with that.
Oh
And
yeah.
so when we look at how voice bots are actually being deployed, at least into POCs, you can come up with a bot in 30 minutes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So as I said, Hugging Face models are out there for speech to text, text to speech. LLMs are out there. Can do all kind of funny things with a few lines of Python
Hmm.
and your cursor or Claude Code. They will happily do that.
Yeah.
Uh, And you can just put it there somewhere on the internet, like in taking that video shortcut, for instance, saying, hey, I tuck it onto a voice provider and I get a phone number with one click and I can talk to it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's
Exactly.
really all it takes. So you
Yeah.
launch it in the afternoon. That doesn't work well, and you're up to quite some surprises when you do this really for production. But
Yeah.
a lot of people are not really aware of that. Yeah. And the
Exactly.
thing is, where it breaks is where we try to come in with our
Hmm.
expertise because we've identified at least like 9 different dimensions of what actually makes a good voice bot. And not surprising is that it starts with SIP because
Yes.
you're calling your bot, so you have a phone connection. You really want to make sure that this phone connection works and that you are not getting any errors on the signaling level. Even the simple things like what happens if the customer puts the call on hold and retrieves it again? Is it still working?
Yeah.
I don't know, right? I mean, typically you don't do this kind of testing manually. You just call it, you're happy that your bot answers, and right. Other
Yeah.
things are like transfers. It's even like in the EU Act where you have the right for a human handover. What if
Hmm.
that doesn't work, right? It's also like regular compliance that falls into that, but it's
Exactly.
based on SIP. No?
Yep.
So you want to get transferred to a person. And I mean, it has been in CCAS and in contact centers in general already a challenge, you probably know when you call some hotline and you wait for half an hour to get connected and suddenly you hear, hey, something happens right now. I'm the next in turn. And you hear that the transfer happens and then the audio drops
Yes.
or the overall call. And,
Yeah.
Not any different from voice bots. Voice bots are transferring you, and it
Yeah.
just needs to work.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
obviously, then you go up the stack, right? So the next one would be
So,
RTP performance. So do you have jitter? Do you have packet loss? Do you have a proper round trip time? Particularly like with Twilio, are they routing you to the next point of presence, or are they routing you from Europe to the US, and you just accumulate
exactly.
like 200 milliseconds of delay or something?
Yes.
You just don't know that. Then it goes up audio quality, MOS, obviously, MOS calculation, one
Yeah.
way without a reference file. So there are quite some new challenges that are in there. But fortunately, there are a lot of good approaches and a lot of research and a lot of
Yeah.
AI models that can do that, right?
Yeah.
So you can nowadays feed your audio into an AI model and tell me what is the MOS without having to compare it to a reference recording.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. What else do we have? Audio tone performance. That's like the one where everyone is focusing on, right? My bot answers in 200 milliseconds.
Yeah.
Now the question is, how long does it take when you barge in, right? So you start
Yes.
talking into your bot. That's one thing. The other thing that I always question, and that's part of our test book, obviously, is so you go into a call, the bot asks you, hey, are you fine with the call being recorded? And usually you say yes, or you say no, and either
Yeah.
thing happens. What if you say, oh, I don't know, I'm not feeling like that today, but, and then you start talking for half an hour, basically filling up
Yeah.
the whole LLM
Yeah.
context, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly, right from the start, your LLM will start to be really inaccurate because of
Yeah.
that. And
Exactly.
that needs to be corrected. And
Yeah.
audio stability, we already talked about that, sneezing into the phone, shouting in Italian into the phone, right? And audio transcription, that's an interesting one, particularly if you uh, test it end to end, right?
Hmm.
We don't have an access into usually a lag into the backend of a voice AI bot that we test for an
Hmm.
enterprise. So we can't test the word error rate of the transcription.
Yes.
But what we can test, obviously, is with all the different dialects. For instance, if we test like an enterprise and insurance company somewhere in Germany, we can have like for each of the different regions, like in the northern Germany, eastern Germany, Bavarian dialect, central German dialect. So it's already like four, or add some five, six, seven, right? And for each of
Hmm.
them, you can test for, does it read it equally for a man or a woman, for a young man, a young woman, old man, old woman? So how
Yeah.
does the bot actually perform in terms of different demographics, different geographics, right?
Yeah.
And how to test that is actually pretty easy if the bot can actually do tool calls, because you can just feed the API call that the bot does back to Sipfront, and then just check, okay, I said this in a very heavy Bavarian dialect, right? My name, my ID, my intention, whatever. And then it feeds it back to us via an API call, and we can check, okay, did it understand it correctly or not? Right?
Hmm.
Yeah, content correctness, obviously hallucinations and all these kind of things. That's a thing for voice AI, obviously, like for any LLM, but it also goes into cost protection. I was mentioning that
Exactly.
before. Like, okay, what happens if I keep a bot just busy for nothing, like for a fraudulent reason? I'm just talking to a bot with probably even another bot, and
Yeah.
just talking like hours and hours and hours, and every minute costs at least like 10 cents per
Yes.
minute for a voice
Exactly.
bot, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Up to 50 or even more, I don't know. And you just accumulate that. And if you call the bot 100 times in parallel, then you have more than 20,000 euros
Oh,
of
yes. Very quickly that racks up. And I see you got regulatory compliance in there as well,
yeah.
because again, there's a lot of it's early days around, especially with respect to AI, but being able to record the person approving that their conversation can be used, not just for for training purposes, but for AI training as well. So this whole
Yeah.
consent and life cycle with the data that's recorded, it's quite
Mm.
complex.
Yeah. Even like yeah, a couple of sections in the UEI Act, for instance,
Hmm.
that people are not really having on their radar, even technically.
Hmm.
but there are like more like general concerns of people, particularly if you talk to people in Germany, right? I mean,
Oh
they are
yeah.
like very into regulatory things, and I'm gonna show you
Okay, cool.
a survey that we did. So,
Hmm.
um, as I said, the talking FAQ, right? I mean, that was what we had like up until probably last year, even not
Yeah.
that far ago, right?
Yeah.
So everybody was super happy. Hey, suddenly my content can talk, my customers can call me and they can ask the bot questions and the bot can answer like yeah, a talking ChatGPT if you want, right?
Exactly.
But there's no ROI on that, right? I mean,
No.
who on a contact center actually answers just questions? I mean, they do things, right? They book
Yeah.
stuff and cancel stuff and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And this is where like agentic voice AI comes in. I mean, it's a bit of a buzzword nowadays, obviously, right? But what it is about is getting actual tasks done, right? And
Exactly.
the funny thing is with like OpenClaw, everybody has heard about this, right? That is where agentic AI basically hit the mainstream, and it wasn't, or it isn't technically anything special, other
No.
than it can interact with all of your tools, WhatsApp and Telegram and your Excel and your email and whatever, right? But it's not
Exactly.
black magic. It's just
No.
like being able from the LLM to call an API.
Yep.
That's about it,
That's
right?
it.
So tool calling, and this is where it gets interesting. Also, when you, for instance, when you call a hotel, and I'm always super excited if a bot answers, because I even first thing I ask is for a pasta recipe, right? So if they can provide me something like that, just as a quick
Yep.
probe. But I'm usually disappointed because they are very limited in what they are allowed to
Yes.
do. Like every
Yeah.
time you want to get information about your booking, you want to cancel a booking, change a booking. That's where the bot says, "Hey, I cannot do this for you. Do you want to talk to a human person?"
Yep.
And then they transfer you, and it's fine. But where does it come from? It comes from the lack of trust.
Yep.
People, enterprises particularly, and maybe Germany is a bit of a special case there, but they are like people are super afraid to let the bot loose on their CRM, on their ERP, on their backend system because you
Hmm.
just don't know what it's gonna do.
Yep.
Probably that's a good like business case startup idea for these kind of firewallings, right? So I think there is even
Exactly.
one. So you can put
Hmm.
an API in between that does the brokering and
Yeah.
all right. So I was always mentioning a little bit about like what customers and people we talk to, enterprises we talk to, how they feel about this. And we did a survey last week or the week before. It was end
Yep.
of February.
Cool.
And the results were pretty interesting because when I look at my LinkedIn feed or even my Reddit feed or whatever, it's full of voice AI and it's like everyone is using it and everyone is totally committed and everything. Yeah. And that's a bit of a problem because if you really talk to them, like the status of enterprise in Germany, I mean, it's not bad in terms of how far enterprises are, but actually not even half of the enterprises we were talking to were actually running a voice bot in production today, right?
Interesting.
And if you look at it, even a third of it is considering something, thinking about something. You get some kind of push
Yep.
sometimes from the top. Hey, we need to do AI in our company. What are we gonna do? And then they say like, okay, let's introduce a voice bot.
Cool.
But a small fraction is evaluating one, right?
Yeah.
Like 18%. Not half of them is even running a bot in production. So all
No.
in total, like at least more than a third is really kind of stepping back still.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
if you look at why, we were also asking why. What are the biggest fears when you think about running voice AI in your company, right? In your enterprise on your hotline. And there are the obvious ones like
Hmm.
technical issues. What if it fails, right? What if it tells
Yeah.
something that it shouldn't tell? It's also kind of
Yeah.
technical in terms of prompting. The other part was data protection, as I
Yeah.
said, right? And you said, hey, it's about like, okay, somebody's calling my bot. What's going to happen with the data? Even, particularly if I use Google Gemini or
Yeah.
OpenAI real time, I send the voices of my customers to some of those cloud providers, and you just don't know what's going to happen
Exactly.
there with the content. with the audio in itself. Have you ever tried a voice cloning AI, like 11 Labs voice cloning or
Yes.
something?
Yeah, yeah, that was impressive.
That is super scary, right? I mean, and now we're sending all of these voices off to the big ones, right? So all
Yes,
of them now have this voice footprint of us, right?
exactly, exactly.
So, and you just need actually 10 seconds of voice
Yeah,
roughly to really be able to clone it quite accurately. And you can get
exactly.
free models from like Quen from
Yes.
Hugging Face for
Yeah,
free.
yeah,
A
yeah,
bit
yeah.
of vibe coding around that. In 2 hours, you have your own voice cloning
Exactly.
engine.
Oh, yeah, it's impressive.
There's a bit of missing transparency, right? What we were
Hmm.
talking about, like, okay, what is the bot actually talking to the customer? What is the customer talking
Yes.
to the bot? Because when you have like call center agents, obviously, if there is some buzz going on the hotline, your agents start to tell you, hopefully, right? Like, hey, we are having the same issue again and again and again. So probably we should look into that, right? Or did anybody notice that customers are complaining about this today or lately more than usual, right?
Yep.
That's something that the bot is probably, at least not out of the box, not going to disclose with you.
Yeah.
But the main problem is customer acceptance.
Yeah.
So enterprises are really afraid, is my customer actually happy with starting to talk with a bot? And that depends a lot on how well the bot can talk. And
Yes.
particularly these NLP bots are super bad in terms of customer acceptance because they tell you, I'm going to ask you this question. Please answer with yes or no. Did you call in the past? And you're like, I don't know. And they say, please answer with yes or no. Right? I mean, that's not super
Yeah.
customer experience, right?
Yeah.
And that's what enterprises are.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm using today. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what they are afraid of, that yeah, it's just not gonna work. We in the past we had even issues or cases where enterprises were like, hey, we have this voice bot and we have some or a higher amount of call drops in the calls during the voice bot conversation than we actually accept or expect, sorry,
Oh.
at stages where we don't expect that. And could it
Hmm.
be like a technical problem that the voice bot is hanging up on the customers or something? And usually it's really just the customer acceptance. People get, if they recognize it's a bot and if the bot is like uh, kind of rude in a way that,
Yeah. Abrupt.
you're
Yeah.
just, yeah, then people are just hanging up and calling the competition. Right?
Gotcha. Understood.
All right. What I do today? And you were asking before, hey, what you're up to? Well, that's exactly what we're doing at Sipfront and what we have been developing over the
Cool.
last 2 years, 2.5.
Yep.
It actually happened by accident, right? Because we are the SIP guys and it's in the name,
Yep.
right? Uh, but when the whole thing started with the bots, our customers started to come to us and say, hey, can you actually not just play your standard, hey, this is an automated test, can you do this or that, or just ignore the call, it's just there to measure the quality, hope I didn't bother you. Can you actually start putting your custom voice there? And we were first saying like, okay, is it being used for mass calling or what? Or
Hmm.
should we be like, um, cautious about that. But actually, then it turns out that that was like when the first bots or first customers were starting with experimenting with bots, being able to, talk to bots with custom waves, with text to
Yes.
speech and so on. And obviously, then at some point it evolved into like our bots talking to other bots, like LLM style bots, but also NLP
Gotcha.
style bots talking
Yep.
to other bots in order to test all these kind of things. And what are all these kind of things? It's exactly what we had in this radar diagram before, right?
Hmm.
So it's really starting with our previous bread and butter business to do like SIP and RTP performance and the audio
Yep.
quality and performance, obviously, right? Because
Yep.
that's the foundation of your voice AI. If
Correct. Yeah.
your speech to text can't properly understand you, or the text to speech it gets distorted on the way to the customer, you can have the best voice AI engine, and it still doesn't help you, right?
Exactly.
And from there, basically, then started upward. So we started to do more and more in terms of content, not so much in terms of then signaling, like how are the cores established. It's still there, obviously, right? And it's the
Yeah.
foundation, and it's super
Hmm.
important to see this. But then it goes like up and up and up. Like how fast are the bots answering? What are they answering? Are they answering faster if my question is short versus my question is long? Are they
Oh.
answering if I switch languages in between
Hmm.
or not? For instance, just lately we figured that Google Gemini, a bot based on Google Gemini, stopped responding when the calling party started to stutter into the phone, which
Yeah.
is actually a huge
Oh.
issue when you think about accessibility of these systems,
Yes,
right? But also
exactly. Yes.
regulatory compliance. So
Hmm.
yeah, there is so many things that can go wrong, and we are always super happy to get like new test cases in there. And
Gotcha.
the easiest way that we do that is typically via an assurance report. So the first thing we start is customers come to us, hopefully already in the planning, conception, POC phase, where they say,
Yeah.
look, I have this use case, I have 3, 4, 5 different bots at hand that I would like to evaluate, which is the best one for
Yeah.
me, and always depending on the vertical, obviously, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
But then we can just run our tests and give them like scores and reports saying this works with that bot, this works better with that bot, that works
Hmm.
better. So you have to choose or be able to
Ah.
tune. I don't know if you
Yeah.
can then based on
Exactly.
the bot,
Yeah.
but it's not like one size fits all, and that's
Yeah.
sometimes it is, but and some bots are really bad, but sometimes it's really more nuanced in a way that yeah, it's just the use cases that are
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
all right. So that's it
Cool.
from my side. That's my quick update over the last 4 years since we last spoke.
I know, but this has been excellent. Again, thank you so much for taking the time and for sharing both your survey results and then the methods that you're using. So, I mean, what are some of the, again, you've done very well in covering the challenges that people are experiencing with voice bots. Now, there's, I guess, different approaches. You can, take advantage of like an open source platform like Jambones and
Mm.
build your bot around that. You could take it more, use like Vappy or one of those.
But I think Vapi is based on Jambones anyways.
That's true,
So
actually. Yeah, that's true.
and a lot of these big voice AI providers are based on Jambones or
Yes,
some other variation, and that makes me actually pretty happy that these and I hope that those guys get paid well by the really big ones. But yeah, that's I mean, open source is carrying the whole thing essentially,
yes,
and that is super
exactly.
important.
Yeah. And I think it's great for Dave and his business because he was very clear several years ago. There's this opportunity called voice AI. We want to be basically the arms supplier, or we want to basically be selling the shovels.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting time that they're in because then you start thinking about, well, what's the jump from using Jambones and what Vappy's delivering, and is that
Mm.
difference worth that delta in terms of what I
Yeah.
need to pay? So that I think is some interesting sort of discussion points that the industry is just trying to work itself out.
Mm.
Around is the broader solution provider worth the additional cash?
Yeah.
And I think this is very important around what you're delivering is helping businesses work out how do they compare against the specific scenarios. Because we've had, for example, Vida Voice on several times presenting what they're doing, and they're a great example of it's focus, focus, focus on the
Mm.
problem you're trying to solve for that small medium enterprise. And and for the SMBs I work with, or sort of that come in my home because we had a leak over the weekend. You saw these bubbles appearing in the ceiling, and it was just like one of the heating pipes had burst, and
Mm.
your water was coming slowly out. But talking to them about their experiences in because they have called so much here in North America, robocalling is a big problem. And
Mm.
the really annoying thing is the robocalls leave voice messages. And because they answer if there's a call coming in, they answer it. So they get a lot more, robocalls than I see because I don't answer them. I just sort of,
Mm,
if it's not a number that I've called with, I don't concept, but small medium businesses are really suffering in just trying to get quality. So I think
mm,
for them, natural fit in using voice bots to filter out all the noise that they're being subjected to get to those few customers that actually want to do business with them.
no,
So I think there's great opportunity there, and being able to use a tool like yours to help them quantify how accurate, how good is it? Is it good enough for my
yeah.
specific use cases? So it's great. I can see lots of applications there. So, I mean, one of the areas I was thinking about is enabling a business to customize your tool to be able to, sort of say, well, I've got this platform and I want to test out how good it is. And these are the criteria, these are the questions, these are the scenarios I want to use in. It sort of feels like, a step could be in how your business model evolves is just, auto provisioning. It's like, here's a tool that we've customized given the questions you've answered that you can use to test these other tools. So you're
Mm.
looking at those sort of scenarios on how Sipfront evolves?
Well, like this kind of automatic creation of tests
Yes,
based on a
yes,
certain vertical, for instance,
yes.
that's something that we have been working for quite a while, actually.
Okay, gotcha.
It's usually, though, it's more efficient still for us to have like predefined test books for the predefined verticals we do, because
Yes,
you were also saying you need to focus, right? And we need
exactly.
to focus like, okay, which kind of vertical are we focusing on? Are we focusing on like insurance companies trying to launch the voice bots and try to get their bots insured? Are we looking at banks? Are we looking at, I don't know, general purpose call
Yep,
centers or whatever?
yep,
So it's something where we still do a lot of, let's say, manual work. But on the other hand, I mean, the thing is, to a certain degree, we are a tool, right?
exactly.
But when we talk to the enterprises, even to the telcos, who should or sometimes do know better, even better than us in terms of what they want and how to do the quality assurance, enterprises usually are not super skilled in terms of how are they testing
Yes.
their bots, or even their CCaaS solutions or whatever.
Hmm.
So they value very much also like our experience in terms of the
Gotcha.
service and the experience that we bring. And we love to do that a lot, like talking to our customers and saying, look, okay,
Cool.
what are your actual problems? And then
Yeah,
try to find a solution rather than having them try to click through something.
exactly. Gotcha. That's
But yeah,
good.
that's I mean, it depends, right? If Sipfront scales further and further and further, then probably
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's not
You'll
gonna
get there,
scale
but
with
not,
it.
but you're not there yet. But that's
Not there
cool.
yet.
Again, Andreas, thank you for sharing your perspectives, for sharing the research you've done, and I wish you the best of luck going forward.
Thank you very much, Alan.